Our topic this morning is the highest Dharma. And as we might expect, Lord Krishna tells us what the highest Dharma is with these words. Again, hear now my supreme word, the most secret and sacred of all. Because you are dearly beloved by me, I offer it to you now for your highest benefit. Absorb yourself in me. Be wholly devoted to me. Worship and bow to me alone. So shall you undoubtedly reach me. This I promise you faithfully, for you are dear to me. Forsaking all other dharmas, remember me alone. I will free you from all sin, even from that of not fulfilling lesser duties. Do not grieve. Krishna here speaks of a path that is higher than religious ritual or fasting or good deeds. And he doesn't put these down. He simply says, if you can do more than that, do more than that. Don't mistake the path for the goal. And Swamiji, in Rays of the Same Light, goes on to say, the ultimate goal of all religion is union with God. The commandments of Scripture provide rules of behavior for people in various walks of life, simply that they may grow from ego attachment toward final awakening in the Lord. On the spiritual path as well, elaborate attention to outward rule and ritual is an aid only for beginners. It serves to keep their minds engaged in God-reminding activities, and thereby diverted from ego-active pursuits. Too much fussy attention to detail, however, becomes a distraction, as one develops the ability to live ever more constantly by inner divine inspiration. And we find even in yoga we have rules. We have the yamas and niyamas, the do's and don'ts of how what attitudes we can live with in the world. These are the do's and don'ts, like non-lying and non-stealing and non-violence. These are the first two stages of Patanjali's eightfold path of yoga. And then our spiritual development gradually evolves, and from living dharmically in the world, following the yamas and niyamas, to self-discipline, to asana, pranayama. And that gives us the power to go even more inward into pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and finally to samadhi. In the Jewish tradition, Moses receives 10 commandments, and he receives them directly from God, inscribed on tablets of stone. And then many centuries later, Jesus was asked about these commandments, and he was asked, what is the highest commandment? And Jesus gave a new commandment. And he said, just like Krishna, he gave them the highest Dharma. He said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second commandment is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. There is a story of St. Francis and his monastery in Italy, and one day these 3 robbers came to the monastery, and Francis was away. All of the other monks were away except for one young monk, and he was afraid of these robbers, and he sent them away. And when Francis came back to the monastery, he told this young monk to go and find the robbers and to bring them back to the monastery. And he said to him, even if you have to search day and night, bow down to them, beg forgiveness, bring them food, insist that they come back here with you. And the monk did so, and the robbers were so astonished. No one had treated them with such respect before. And they started to wonder, well, now, if this young monk is so kind to us, what must it be like to be with St. Francis? They came back to the monastery. They joined the monastery. Eventually, these 3 robbers became great saints. And so it is with us too. In the millions of lives we've led, we've broken the rules, and we've committed many mistakes. But God is like St. Francis. He doesn't hold these things against us. He's no tyrant. He wants us to live in the joy that he gave us. And once we wake up to that fact, then the past is gone. When you turn a fan off, it won't stop immediately. It spins around a few times and then it's finally off. And so also our past bad karma may take a little while to spin around a little bit, but then when we put in the right effort, it's gone. Here's the story of Krishna and Draupadi, where Lord Krishna asks her, why don't you practice the yoga meditation that I taught you? And she replies, my Lord, I would love to practice it, but I can't take my mind away from you enough in order to practice it. And too bad we're not always in that situation. If we were always in samadhi like she was, then maybe there would be no more need for us to practice the dharana and the dhyana. And when you can truly live in the highest dharma, the lower duties no longer have meaning. Some Krishna bhaktas may say, well, our age is too primitive for practicing yoga and meditation. You know, we only have to sing the name of God. And if you only that will give you salvation. And that would be very convenient and easier than meditation, but it may not reflect your particular stage of evolution at the moment. And we're not yet so one-pointed that we can't take our mind away from God. And so we need to use every means at our disposal to get to that place. Yogananda Ji tells the story of a man bhakta who practiced devotion for 20 years, and he was very close to having an experience of God, but his path was not giving that to him. And Yogananda Ji finally persuaded the man to take Kriya initiation. And within a week, the man had that divine experience that he had been searching so long for. Yogananda Ji said that Technique and devotion work together like mathematics. They can't fail. He said, Kriya Yoga takes you onto the universal highway where all bypaths of spiritual practice meet. Thank you.
It also says in the Bible that the law was brought by Moses, but truth and grace came by Jesus Christ. And it's true that the Jews that had been enslaved for generations in Egypt, they suddenly were freed and led by Moses out of slavery into the desert, and suddenly there was a population that had never been able to make their own choices or had any kind of self-determination. And so there they were crossing the desert on their way to the Holy Land, and they needed to know what to do. And Moses went up to a mountaintop, and God gave him these 10 commandments on these cement rock slabs. And so that's where the Christian religion, the Judeo-tradition, gets their rules for learning how to behave. After Buddhism, because Karma Kand had everybody behaving, going to priests and asking them to help alleviate their karma. Please do these mantras, let me pay you money, and you can alleviate my karma, and I will be saved. And Buddha came along and said, nobody else can do that work for you. You have to put out the self-effort to become spiritually advanced, to become enlightened. And so suddenly there wasn't an emphasis on God and ritual anymore. It was on self-effort, which everybody needed. And then after a certain point, the pendulum started to swing the other way, and it was all about me, what can I do in self-effort, and it wasn't about the divine, it wasn't about God. Buddha didn't really talk about God, because at that point, that isn't what was needed. But now, we needed to start adding some heart and some devotion. And so that's when Adi Shankaracharya came along and started translating the scriptures and saying, no, there's both, there's the spiritual path, and there's also communion with God, but both are needed. And of course, when Jesus came after that, he was trying to say, yes, it's not all about laws, because the laws of Moses had come down, and the priests of Judaism were misusing them, and those priests were corrupt, and everybody had to pay money to get to the temple and get the white lamb to be sacrificed, and had to change money for tokens. It was all very power and corrupt centric. And Jesus came along and said, the law is there, yes, but we have a Father who loves us, and turn to your Father in love, and he will help you. This is what you need, is this communion with your Father. And then Yogananda comes along and says, yes, the Father is there, these Dharma, these principles are needed, but Divine Mother, she will forgive you anything, and you just must love her. So when populations need a change of consciousness, when souls are crying out, I need to take my next step, then the avatar comes, then the guru comes to us personally. And so Jesus' grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Swami tells us that grace, another definition of grace, is the power to rise spiritually. And truth is the experience of oneness with God. So that grace that comes to us when we know how to behave. We have the yamas and the niyamas and the 10 commandments. If we don't know how to behave, if we don't know how to avoid wrong action, then we're just going to continually create more and more karma and need to constantly be battling our karma. But if we can avoid wrong action and cling to right action, cling what brings us to the light, more and more light. We don't need to be dead to go through the tunnel towards the light. And so we want to cling to that action that will take us to the light. And I'm sure we all have our own experiences and stories. But when I first got onto the spiritual path or found Ananda, just before that period of time, I had been very worldly, very thinking always about myself, not really serviceful. I was super impatient, get angry very quickly, just had all these very not nice aspects to my personality. But then I was seeking God, and through God's grace to help me rise spiritually, I came across Ananda, and suddenly was in the presence of more elevated souls than myself, and I was able to compare myself, saying, wow, I'm just down on the bottom of this totem pole, but I see all these great examples of what I want to be like. And on one hand, how humbling; on the other, it gave me great hope, because they said, the path is so practical. You should start meditating. You should start communing inwardly with God. And so meditation, Kriya Yoga, it's what turns our life around from just energy only to myself, being selfish, just going out in the world and grabbing what I want, to, energy. No, I need to restrain myself and bring that energy in and control pranayam, control my own impulses and actions, so that I may conserve that energy and bring it up to an uplifted state. And then we think of the law of karma. We have the law that Moses brought, and just think of the law of karma. This is what God brought us. This is how we learn to grow. This is how we evolve spiritually. And if it weren't for the law of karma, how would we ever learn our lessons? We would just go on thinking we could have our cake and eat it too, and we could do anything we wanted. So the law of karma is our friend, and it helps us to know where we will find our lasting happiness. Because we can try many different ways to take charge of this world, but then if it doesn't give us lasting satisfaction and happiness, we will try something else. We will try something else. And we will move from the outer to the inner. And so even if you think about the spiritual path, if we have bhakti yoga, we may be chanting very, very loudly or in frenzy to God. But in the end, the grace to rise spiritually is really about that inner love for God. Take it from outside, bring it in. That karma yoga that we do, all these good seva, wonderful things. We can build hospitals, we can build schools. But in the end, that inner karma yoga, that inner action that will bring energy up the spine, that will still our minds and open our hearts and allow us to have that truth, that communion with God. And Gyan Yoga, that's like, I can read all the scriptures, I can memorize them. But if I am not having an experience of truth, of oneness, then I haven't gotten very far. And it's all about our consciousness. We have karma. We have a place where we were born. There's people that are around us. There's the situations that we are in. Our karma has brought us right here. And we can be happy or upset about that, but basically it's all about our consciousness. There's something else going on. It is not what it seems. This is happening with me right now because this is an opportunity for me to have my highest Dharma, which is expand my awareness, expand my consciousness into oneness with God. And there are steps to take to get there, but that's why this is happening to me. That is why I drew it. And just because we've learned to be good on the spiritual path, we may be practicing the yamas and niyamas and the 10 commandments. And yes, I'm good. I'm a nice person. I'm good. And so we can't be content with that. The gurus, they're not content that we're just nice people. It's like they want us to achieve what they have. They want us to find moksha. They want us to be enlightened. And so they have our highest Dharma in mind. So even though we might think our highest Dharma is to get that great job and to buy that nice house, but if it doesn't happen for us and we think, oh, my karma, or, God doesn't love me or something. But no, the masters, God is saying, you have something higher to strive for, and it has nothing to do with what's outside of you. And so let's not compare ourselves, just if we're nice, to other nice people. It's just like I'm thinking about consciousness. They're not thinking about consciousness, so I have really attained something spiritually. It's like, no, if you're going to compare yourself with somebody, compare yourself to them. And just see how high that mountaintop is and do not stop working for it. You know, we can't rest on our laurels just because we started meditating and our awareness has grown. And yes, our life is so much better. But we are not there yet. It's easy to rest on our laurels. There's no disasters happening in my life right now. It's good. I'm just going to watch videos every night. No, there's so many other things for you to read, to work on, to go deeper in meditation. Read their words, listen to their voices. You know, go on YouTube, watch Swami talk about his guru. You know, this is what we want to attain. So let's not think that we already have it completely made if we're now feeling less stressed out in our lives. There's many of you here in this hall who were with us when we were looking for a new ashram. And, you know, you think of, the laws of finance or the laws of banking or the laws of money. It's like we had put together all the supporting members and all the donations, and we were looking at how can we afford a new center, because we were being asked to leave our old center. Those people were moving back from the U.S. and they were making us move out. And so many of you remember we were just searching all over, mostly South Delhi, all over South Delhi, and we could just not get the finances to work. No matter how much money we had, it was not giving us what we needed. Very dark, dingy basements with no parking and things like that is what we could afford. But we put out the effort, and we looked and looked for different places. And finally, with all this effort, it still wasn't working out financially. But we clung to Krishna. We clung to God. Cling to me and worship me, and I will make good your deficiencies. I will make up for your lack. And this was Krishna economics. And so suddenly a devotee came in and said, here, this was my mother's house. Why don't you use that as your center? And by the way, even though it's in ruins, I will renovate it for you. So this was just this great gift that came from all of our deep, deep faith that God would bring us what we needed when we needed it. And, you know, and for those seeking first the kingdom of God. And then all these things were added unto us. And so Krishna says, you know, give your heart to me, cling to me. Master says, our guru says, you must never lose courage. I, as the guru, will never give up my job about you. And I'll give you lots of my good karma so you can pull through. And that's where this center came from. And you think of not only one guru, but all our gurus, how long they have been depositing money in that bank account that we as chelas are able to pull from. So you think, wow, so we've got this nice big bank account of the gurus, and we are lacking something. So where do we find it as his chelas? We say, we cling to me, worship me, and I will make up for your lack. And so when we think of God's law of creation, and we think of the billions of galaxies with the trillions of stars in them, how can we comprehend how vast this galaxy is? We can't. At the same time, you are dear to me. He loves us. Each of us have our own relationship with God, and we can call on him at any time. He just says, give your heart to me. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and you can receive everything. And so this is our highest dharma, to yes, behave, practice the yamas and niyamas, do meditation, do Kriya Yoga, change that energy to outward seeking, to inward seeking, and one-pointedly feel that divine presence. That's the truth. The grace is the ability to rise spiritually. And those gurus and God and Divine Mother are showering us with that grace in every moment. It's up to us to turn the cup of our consciousness up and receive that grace so that we can be like him. Just give our hearts to him, and he will make good our deficiencies. God bless you.